Got my man Robert Mendoza, who's the head chef of Le Saint Sebastien in Paris, France. Robert, my friend, thanks for taking some time.
Oh, dude, thank you. Thank you for asking me. This is a first for me, actually.
This is great. I was compelled, having been Facebook friends for a while, I've just been scanning the interwebs, looking for people putting out positivity, and you posted a video just outside of the restaurant, just talking about the scene, the vibe, what's happening with you, what's going on with the restaurant. And so I wanted to share that. That's what this is all about. So, but I want to take people back a little bit to give a background of how you ended up in Paris and then talk about the scene in Paris as it stands today. So you came up in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
And then, you know, spent time kind of in the Northwest. Then you hit stops in Mexico City, Catbird Seed in Nashville, Verjus in Paris, France. So talk about coming up in the industry, starting in Portland, and just real quick, kind of like take us through how the hell you ended up in all these different places, why that travel bug kind of hit you when it came to cooking.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I started in Portland, Oregon. I started cooking because I really had no other option. You know, like I knew I wasn't going to go to school. I didn't have money to go to college. And to be honest, like I had just read, when I was 17, I read Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. And I was like, I want to do that. Like,
you want to be a pirate.
Yeah, like I just want to do that. It's just like exactly how I think about things, just like my mindset. I never wanted to be a 9-to-5 kind of person. I just wanted to, you know, party and cook and make people happy, which is that. But yeah, I started in Portland, which it was in early 2000s or 2006, around that time when like the Portland got on the map because of a restaurant called Le Pigeon.
Yeah. Gabriel Rucker's place.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I was like in this bubble that I had no idea that I was in this bubble where like every restaurant was so good. Like no matter where you worked in Portland, like you had the best produce, just like amazing chefs that like one of my first chefs was this guy named Henry Kibet, and he worked at Bouchon, you know, like under like the Thomas Keller whole thing, and like just stuff like that. All these people had come to Portland because it was cheap and great product, and I grew up with that without even knowing.
Yeah, it's a good scene there. So many great restaurants. I think of Nong's Cowman Guy and Pot and Gabriel Rucker's got a couple great places.
Sure.
Aaron Bennett, like so many good chefs.
Yeah.
Carlo the Magna's doing great stuff now.
Oh,
so
absolutely. Yeah. You know, and all of them are like Gregory Gourdet, like really good friends of mine that are like crushing. But this was like, you know, a long time ago, before Instagram, before YouTube. You know, it was just like all the information you would get was from books and from other people that would travel, and they would come back and they would tell you, you know. So yeah, so I used to work with this guy named Mark Wooten, and he owns a restaurant called Little Conejo or something like that. It's a taqueria in Vancouver, actually, just across the river in Portland. But we used to work together many years ago, and I still remember the first time he brought in the Manresa cookbook. And I was like, what is this? What is this? And just like flipping through it. And like I asked him to borrow it, and then just like doing that. And then I would go to Powell's bookstore because I didn't have any money. Yeah. And like it has like one of the biggest cooking sections ever. Like I think it's like 3 to 4 aisles of just cookbooks. And I used to go there. I didn't have much money back then, so I just to go there and sit down. I just grab a book and I start reading it, looking through it, and I'll just like hang out at Powell's. And this is like how I started discovering the world. Like that's how I discovered Grand Achatz, Alinea, and like so many other restaurants. And then yeah, like that's kind of how the travel thing started. Like I always wanted to work for the best, and yeah, I just went for it.
I love that. And then so you're at you know, Willows Inn in Washington, and so you kind of venture outside of Portland, and then you go down to Mexico. and then you're going international, and that kind of clearly something was important to you. So why was it important to make the trek down to Mexico?
Honestly, it was, I lived in Mexico when I was a kid, actually. This is something that not many people know of, but when I was from 12 to 14, I lived with my grandparents in the middle of nowhere in Mexico, like up in the mountains of Guerrero, where there's literally like barely any electricity, if there's any. It's literally like the real deal. And to be honest, like I had already grown up in the States, and all I wanted was like cheeseburgers, you know, and like watch cartoons and just do that. And I had to do chores. I had to water the plants, harvest the vegetables, take care of the animals. You know, all these, like, right now I look back and I'm like, I was such an idiot. Like, I would love to do that right now. To have that right now would be so great. But back then I was just like this spoiled little kid that was just like, you know, just not very grateful about that. But I think that's kind of like what also started me in this path a little bit, just like my grandparents and seeing how they lived. And basically, if we didn't grow it, we didn't eat it. And just the respect we had for the animals that were growing. Like, I remember, like, when I was 13, I had to butcher a pig, and like I had to like actually, like, you know, and you know, yeah. And I was just so sad, and I wouldn't eat it. Like, I just wouldn't eat it. And like my grandfather like sat me down, and he like brought me some carnitas made from that pig. And he's like, listen, like, this pig like lived his whole life, and like now it's gonna like support our life, and he's gonna be a part of us, you know. And like this is like how it is, like having that utmost respect for like, you know, the produce, living things, like just taking care of things. And that's like a thing that like I like was fortified working at the Willows Inn under Blaine Wetzel. Like he like foraging and just like really like, you know, identifying the product at their peak moment. And then, you know, it's like, it's only like a 2-week window when like, you know, the salmon berries are at their best, or yeah, I don't know. It's just little things like that that I've been very fortunate to experience.
What are a couple of the dishes? Now I'm inspired. Like, what are the couple of the dishes that you were cooking with abuelita from the garden, or, you know?
Well, let's see. Like, one of the things that we ate as breakfast was chilaquiles, of course. She would make killer albóndigas. I think it's one of my favorite dishes. It's just like ground chicken meatballs with mint, and it's just like in this like really hearty broth. Super, super good. And yeah, all of that would, all the herbs and like all, like we would go pick a lemon from the tree, you know, and just like cut it. Like it's literally was like hanging from a tree like seconds ago. Stuff like that, that like, I'm very fortunate to like look back and be like, whoa, that's sick.
Awesome. All right. So then you make the trek across the pond.
Yeah.
I mean, historic restaurant as well. And then that experience, what was it like for you going? Do you speak French fluently?
Right now, yes. When I first moved here, no. I've been here for a little bit over 4 years. But when I first moved here, right before I was working at the Catbird Seat in Nashville under Ryan Pulley. And that was like probably one of my favorite restaurants I've ever worked at. It was, you know, the Willows Inn was really intense and like really fun, but just like it was very like we're like going for it, you know. It was like just a push type of restaurant, where the Catbird was the same, but it was fun. Where like Ryan Pulley, we would like start dancing in the middle of service, you know, and like we would just stop cooking and like just turn off the music and just like start dancing, and people would just like get into it. It's like an 18-seat restaurant where we're playing Chicago house music, you know, during service, and like, you know, cooking like some of the most amazing food you would ever have. And it was just more about like the experience, like the time of being there, just having fun, and like, you know, yeah. So while I was there, I moved to Nashville for a girl, and we broke up. And then, so that's like, I was like, okay, what have I always wanted to do? Like always. And I was like, go to France. So I just moved without really thinking about, like, this is what I do. I just like, I pick a couple of restaurants that I want to work at in a city, and then I just go for it. I just move like Like
I love it.
no, I think when I first moved to Paris, I think I had like 300 euros in my pocket,
Right.
and like that's it. And yeah, just kind of backing myself up to a wall and like have no room for any failure really. Like I have
Yeah,
to
we'll talk
succeed.
about. I'm very interested then in the difference. You're just talking about the difference between Willow Inn and maybe that from Portland, that from Mexico, now that from Nashville and Catbird Seat.
Yeah,
Now you're at Verjus, you're in Paris, like the epicenter of where guys like us coming up in the
yeah,
2000s were like, that's it. That's where
yeah,
food exists at the highest levels
for sure.
before America kind of had its boom time and really came up and is now at the forefront as well. So I'm interested the difference in potentially the kitchen culture and
Hmm.
the difference in the guest and dining culture.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like a culture shock. To be honest, when I first got here, I had a pretty good resume and like letters of recommendations from like my heroes,
Yeah.
um, and I applied to my top 5 restaurants. I'm not going to tell you which ones they were, but they all like sat me down. We had interviews, and they asked me, "Do you have a visa?" And I said, "No." And they're like,
Mm.
"Yeah, sorry, man. Like, you're not going to work here." And like one by one, and then there's like my last interview. The chef actually like asked me, "Do I have if I had a visa?" And I said no. And then he just like got up and he's like, "Sorry, man," and just like left me sitting there. Like, and then I'm just like, okay, like, actually, I think he told me you will never work in Paris without a visa.
Shit, man. You just
Yeah,
moved there and all you got is 300 euros. You can't even get back home.
dude, no, I'm stuck. And like the thing is, like, I can't even call my parents for like help. Like, we're poor. Like, it's not like we grow up with money and I can just be like, hey, parents, like, bail me out. Like, I'm like super effed. So like, I left that restaurant, that'd be Touton, and um, just kind of like with the fire in my stomach where I'm like, no, fuck that guy. Like, no, fuck that guy. And I just like went to a cafe, wrote like the next 5 restaurants, and Verjus happened to be at the top of that list. And then I showed up, I gave him my resume, and he's like, dude, what the fuck? You want to work here? And I was like, please. I went to Stage the next day just to trail for 3 hours. And then after 3 hours, he like sat me down. He's like, all right, like, what do you need from us? Like, and I'm like,
Let's
I don't
go.
have a, yeah, I was like, I don't have a visa. He's like, all right, done. And just like that, like a month later, I had a visa. I was working full time, and like I applied for like a chef de partie, but I think like after a month, I was a sous chef there. Um, yeah, and just kind of worked there for 2 years. One of the main differences of working in kitchens in Europe than in the States or in Mexico is like we get to work with raw product. Like, like scallops come in the shell and they're alive. Like squid are alive. Like, shit like that, that
Yeah.
like just like real raw, like nothing is like in vacuum pack, nothing is vacuum sealed or, stuff like that or sous vide or nothing. It's just like you get like um like during deer season we're getting like full on deer with fur and stuff like that. It's like a different experience where you're
Yeah.
not just getting like a loin and you're portioning a loin or you're cleaning up a loin of something. You're actually like breaking down animals and like yeah, like even fish come whole with guts and scales and everything. Like that's a standard. Like it's not like you're getting a fillet of a salmon and you're skinning it and portioning it and like that's all you have to do. Is like, no, dude, like you have to gut it, you have to scale it, you have to like, you know, do all these other things before you get to the point where I used to get it back home in the States.
You have to do everything except fish it out of the water, basically,
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
or shoot it with a rifle in the case of
Well,
the deer.
yeah, and like for me, like that's really exciting to work with stuff like that. Because like other than like the Willows Inn, I've never really experienced stuff like that. And for me, I think it's very important to see things as they are, like raw, and like have that interaction with, like any protein or anything that you're working with. Um, so yeah, it's different.
Yeah, oh, man, I hear that, and it takes me right back to Mexico and the
Yeah.
pig. And the carnitas, like if you want the carnitas, you're gonna have to kill the pig. So
Right.
I think that's fascinating. The other thing that really struck me in hearing what you're talking about, and then knowing the connection that you have with the family in Mexico, you're an immigrant again in a different way. You're struggling through the challenges that undocumented workers, who are the backbone of the industry in America and so many other countries. You know, I think of in Germany, the Turkish immigrants are the backbone of a lot of restaurants. We don't think about that here because we think of Mexicans as the immigrants. So for you, did that feel all of a sudden like you were an earlier generation of your family making their way to America?
To be completely honest, like I've never felt more connected to my parents than like one of my first couple of years here. Because like, you know, I definitely felt like my parents don't even speak English still, you know, and they've been living in the States for a long time. But like, just like even like that language barrier where even going to a bakery when I first moved here and like asking for like anything and just like how difficult that is just to like ask for something and like not being able to communicate and just these struggles that like these minuscule struggles that like seem so little, but they're actually like huge, like they affect you, you know? So
you were lucky. I mean, you spoke English and you know that at least there's quite a few places in Paris where people speak English versus only speaking Spanish and coming to the States. So like even that you had a little bit of a leg up and you spoke kitchen language, which is all French anyway. So you already had some
and that's the thing. Like once you know, like you know, I think at that point I've been in restaurants for like 11 years and like you can just observe like what's going on and you can pick it up and like you can read a ticket, you know, like you just learn what the proteins or whatever and like you just look around and like Verjus was a tasting menu, so you can see like, all right, the guy that is like 2 courses before my course is going on 3 by 2 by 3 by 2. It's like, all right, I need to be 3 by 2 by 3 by 2, you know, like just kind of be like very observant and like you don't really have to speak any language if you just know what's going on.
Totally true. A lot of times you're not speaking anyway. You're just saying be chef the whole time. You just need to be able to count and recognize the tickets to the point that you're making. All right. So now I want to get current. So you're at Le Saint Sebastien and the shit hits the fan. You're in all of this, you know, your first like head chef position in Paris, France. Like it's all the things you've ever dreamed about. And then this happens. So kind of take us through what was happening just before this as you're kind of hitting stride as the head chef there. And then this happens and kind of the pivot or what's going on with you and your crew right now.
So we've been open for 1.5 years. I think that since the beginning, I think we were getting pretty good reviews and like people were coming in and like slowly like you're getting busier and busier. And I think like last year after summer was like our ultimate, like, whoa, we're like packed every day. We're like refusing people. Like, you know, we're at the place where we wanted to be. And it felt really good. It was like amazing. And I had a full team, like my sous chef, like I had cooks and like I started working with schools. Like for me, it's very important to like get involved with the schools and just kind of like get involved with the next generation of like cooks that are going to be, you know, handling this shit later.
Because they start very young there, right? There's culinary programs in like middle school lunches. Let's not even fucking go into school lunches. The difference between school lunch there versus here. So it's like that's a whole other show for sure. So for you then, you're at that moment, you have your hidden stride, like you're really humming along.
You know, like it's like the first menu was like not really like what I thought it was gonna be, but then we start working on it, and then like after a year, it's like, all right, cool, like, you know, I feel like I'm starting to get my voice of like what the food I want it to look like, what I want it to taste like, just like really comforting, but just in a different perspective, just like something different. It's a very limited small menu. We do 12 courses, including dessert, or 12 dishes. Actually, it's a la carte restaurant. So we do 12 dishes, and the menu is broken down with like starters, mains, and desserts. So it's a very small menu. And the idea behind that was just like we needed to like have all focus on like what we have. Like we couldn't like do a huge thing. Like I would just want to be very focused, very clean, and like full attention on what we're doing, even if we're doing like, you know, we're doing 2 turns in a night, you know, we can still like do a really, really good job. So we were hearing about this coronavirus early on this year, keeping up on the news, and I had scheduled a vacation with my girlfriend, and that's something that like one of the reasons why I wanted to get on this podcast is because of this. Like I'm usually like I feel like I'm a very quiet person, and I don't really like speak. You know, I'm not very like I don't know. But for me, I think it's very important to like show the difference between like Europe and the US right now, you know, and just kind of like there's no reason why we can't have what we have in Europe in the US, you know. And one of those things was vacation time. I know it's a big thing, but like I've been.
What is that, Robert? Tell me about this vacation time thing you speak of.
I moved to France, and basically everyone kept talking. I moved here in like March of 2016, and everyone was talking about August. What are you going to do in August? What are you going to do in August? And I was like, work? What are you talking about? Like what? And everyone was just like, no, like, where are you going to go somewhere? I'm like, I'm going to stay here. And they're like, everyone was weirded out. And then August came and the restaurant shut down for a month because everyone goes on vacation and I got paid, you know, and I'm just like, oh, what the fuck? What is this? And
holiday.
Then, like,
they call it holiday out there.
Yeah. And for 3 weeks, like you just get to do whatever you want. You have money in your pocket and you just like get to refresh. And then we just came back. We come back after summer vacation, and we're just like ready to go. Like, you know, just like super like recharged, pumped. Like everyone is just like stoked. Everyone's like telling stories and just like have this like full on energy of like what they've eaten, like what they've seen, and it's like so refreshing. And to me, it was a revelation. It was like, what is this? You know, and so this is one of the things that like I want to be really outspoken about. Especially for like my colleagues back home, where like this should be normal everywhere. There's no reason why it's not. And like, to be honest, like I get it a little bit. I'm making far less money than I would be making back home. I can tell you this for sure. And it's that, but the quality of life that I have here, like
not even close.
Not even close, you know? So there's that. Let me go back. I'm going on vacation. We go to Mexico City for 2 weeks, Oaxaca a little bit for a week as well. And then like it starts to like shit hit the fan. Like the owner of the restaurant calls me like the first week of March, and she's like, hey, what's going on? Like everyone's freaking out. Like, should we close the restaurant? And I'm like,
wow.
I mean, I think honestly, looking at what was happening in Spain, what was happening in Italy, and like especially in China, and I was just like, yeah, we should definitely just like close it right now and like, you know, figure it out what was going to happen. And then like the day after we had that conversation, that's when France started their quarantine officially, and like everything had to be shut down. So I basically came back from Mexico to a shutdown restaurant and like no team, and just kind of like figuring out what to do. And there's like some other things that were happening at just specifically at my restaurant where my dishwasher had like the month prior, my dishwasher had visa problems, so we had to like let him go. So we didn't have a dishwasher, a full-time dishwasher. Yeah. You know, we had people coming in and like wash dishes for us, like extras and stuff like that. But we had to like let go of our dishwasher. And then like one of my chef de parties is Mexican, and he's dealing with visa stuff as well. And we were doing his paperwork, but he had to like go back to Mexico in order to get that process going. And then like this happened. So we basically right now, and then like stagiaires that we had were like it was ending anyway. So like they're done. So Fortunately, I didn't get to fire anybody or have that experience of just like letting people go or just like having to do that. But the thing is like that right now we're under something called chômage technique, which means it's like unemployment basically, and everyone just gets unemployment right now, similar as the U.S. And the only people that are hired right now in the kitchen is like myself, my sous chef, and then like 2 servers, and like that's it. You know, we don't have that big of staff anyways. So I think that like money wise, it's okay. But even that, like we're not paying any rent on our space. You know, that was like something huge that we don't have to pay any rent.
Why is that? The relationship with the landlord? Is that something mandated?
No, it's mandated. Yeah, exactly. So that's like another thing that I think like many chefs have been talking about. I think David Chang has been really outspoken about like the rent and paying the rent and like all that stuff. And like to be honest, like, I think that's been a huge like help for us. It's just like, you know, everyone like understanding that like we're not having any revenue right now. We're not doing anything like, you know, like we shouldn't pay.
Yeah, anybody who's in development or a landlord, it's an investment property. Investments go up and down. And so it's an interesting conversation I think needs to happen a lot more. Vacation time, man, does that need to happen? We got a lot of threads here. We might have to have a weekly thing on documented workers and visas, like the vacation time. The relationship with landlords and real estate is a big burden 100%. On the restaurant industry as a whole, the way that that's positioned. So a lot there. I'm interested then now thinking about Paris, another thing, when tourism has come up a few different times where so many restaurants have positioned themselves, you know, they're spending more money on marketing outside of their own markets because they're trying to attract, they're in New York, they're trying to attract people from Paris and France. Paris, one of the top tourist cities in the entire world. Yeah. As that is a major issue and concern. Have you thought differently about cultivating community? Because it's really got to be local first. It comes into play in the products you mentioned, but a lot of times Paris restaurants are known for being sometimes more friendly to tourists than they are to locals. So talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
So since the beginning, when we were developing the restaurant as like the identity and like what we wanted to be and like who do we want to target or cater to, ideally, like we were aiming for people from the neighborhood, you know. Obviously, like me being an immigrant or being from the US, there is going to be some people coming from the US, and there are, and we're shooting for like an 80-20 kind of thing, like 80% like French people, 20% like tourists and stuff like that. And I mean, it didn't really work. It's kind of like we were looking at our so one of the ways that we have been able to identify like the percentage of tourists or specifically like people from the US that were eating at the restaurant were just by the credit cards. Sure. So we were just like looking at bank statements and then like non-French credit cards versus like foreign credit cards. And we're at like a 60% foreign. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I think that it's been like hard. Like we've been trying not to be like a tourist restaurant. Not that there's anything wrong with that, to be honest. But it was just like we're trying to like just be more catered to the neighborhood, like I said, and just kind of, you know, be French.
Yeah. Well, so I saw you doing a little video outside the restaurant, you know. Yeah. And so that you're not talking to tourists through that video. No tourists are watching that, or I'm watching it, but I'm not on my way to Paris, just so you know. That's for the locals, the people in the community. Not yet, soon. Yeah. So why was that important for you to be able to tell people what's going on with you, to communicate? And to your point, you're not this big gregarious personality that's out there trying to like talk all the time. You just hustle in the kitchen and have that quiet intensity. So why was it important for you to get out in front of the camera and speak to the people?
So it was like a really powerful moment for me. So like when I came back from Mexico and like I went to the restaurant, it was just empty. The chairs are up, and like we're trying to figure out what's our next step. What are we gonna be? What are we gonna do? How are we gonna like push forward and like overcome this? And just kind of like thinking of strategies and just kind of like how to like be proactive. I think that like one of like my characters, like especially in the kitchen, is like I don't wait. I'm always very like trying to do something. Like what's the next thing? Let's go. Like let's not wait. I hate waiting.
Yeah.
And
yeah. You're a natural chef. So impatient.
Oh man. And so my friend Luca actually started this thing where he started getting the producers involved. So he would pick a chef every week. He picks a chef every week. And then that chef has to do like a starter, main, and the dessert. And then he just, according to whatever ingredients he uses, he sources them from like direct farmers or producers or, butchers or stuff like that. And it's just like this initiative that started through my friend Luca. And
what's that called?
It's called Ona. It's just it's just called Ona, ONA. It's a bigger company than that. He just started doing that for the quarantine because like everything was being shut down, and I think that like we need to take care of our producers, and like without them, if they're fucked, we're fucked.
Yeah, you're not getting those live scallops and that deer with fur on it and
exactly.
Uneviscerated fish anymore if they don't exist.
Right. So yeah, he started this this project, and I was fortunate enough to be asked to be a part of that. And it was just like a powerful moment for me because like, I don't know, it was just like, we're in it. It just felt like a community. We're all in it. We're here together. We're like battling this. And I was just like, really compelled to just say thank you. Cause like, I mean, I'm in this position where I'm like, I've been really lucky for most of my life. And like, I was just like really touched by like, just like how everyone's working together. And there's like another project by my friend. It's called Vida Local. It's like Vida Loca, Vida Local. And it's like another movement about like just getting people to buy locally, go to local restaurants, kind of like get people more involved in like the community.
Is that in Paris or is that in Mexico?
It's in Paris.
It's in Paris. Okay, great.
Yeah. And then, and like the other thing that I've been doing is kind of like my first move when I came back from Mexico, I kind of assessed the situation for like a couple of days. And then I just kind of was like, I can't just do nothing. So I started like volunteering and cooking for hotel or for hospitals. So I've been working at feeding hospital workers 2 times a week. And it's just like I have a team of volunteers. We get produce delivered to us like every day just from like producers, and like we just cook for heaps amount of people. And that's kind of like, I think that me being in the kitchen kind of gets me back into like ease a little bit, even though it's very intense and like very like it can be very chaotic at times. It's kind of brings me back to center in a way where like I'm in a space that I know and like something that like I'm very like comfortable with. And then I started thinking of like, all right, what can we do for the restaurant? What can like we start doing to move forward? So yeah.
I appreciate all that. So then one last little thing, and then we get to playlist items because I'm very interested to find out what you're playing when you're dancing a catbird seat or your kitchen now. But I see all these interconnecting pieces. We're talking about community. Now you're realizing that you need the locals even more than ever. You think about this produce that you're getting, these products that you're getting, and how unbelievably untouched that they are. And then now knowing that you need to support that. Are you thinking even more differently about how much you need to connect directly to the person right down the street or right next to you in the kitchen or right down the valley from you who's producing these products? Do you think we now as chefs, as you in the kitchen, have a bigger responsibility to be a sounding board and a conduit for hospitality and for local products, local people?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think that like for me, one of the things that I've learned early on is like we do our voting with our money, you know, and like
Yes.
basically like whoever, wherever you buy or wherever you move money towards, like that's kind of like what's gonna be boosted up, and like that's kind of like one of the ideals that I've had since the beginning is like, who am I giving my money to? Is it like, you know, this farmer that's like producing, you know, just turnips, or like this big like chain that is like has everything that I need, but like is not going to be worth it? So yeah, for sure, 100%. I think that like right now more than ever, I think that many people that have been in my position have been realizing that like, oh fuck, like we need to like be very more like attentive to what actions we're taking, because like they can definitely affect a lot of people without even noticing, you know, like these slight little things from like buying from certain companies opposed to going to the farmers market, or buying direct from the producers or stuff like that. That it's very simple. It's like nothing that hard. It's just like, you know, it's just maybe a little bit tedious. I don't know. But
yeah. I mean, I hear it, man. Investing your money, your time, your effort, your voice to the people. It's always the people. It's the people that are in the trenches with you. It's the people in your community that you serve. It's the tourists that you serve as well. But it's being like having that identity is important. And then the people behind those products, I think, is a really important thing.
For
so
sure.
spend your money somewhere where you know a human being is usually a good idea. So I love that. I love where you're at. And I love that you put yourself into an uncomfortable situation for you, putting yourself out there, speaking more, lending your voice to this, being on a show like this, you know, where I'm bombastic and you're very like, I'm just going to tell you my experience. And I love it, man. I absolutely love it. All right. When Robert Mendoza is fucking grooving in the kitchen, what are you guys listening to? I got to know. I'll tell you, in our kitchens early on coming up, we always listened to Dancing on the Ceiling. Was like one of those songs that we always listen to, Lionel Richie. And if I hear that song now, I can't help it. I just start grooving like I'm in the kitchen. So what are a couple of those songs for you and your team?
So we actually have a playlist on Spotify. I'll send you a link, or I'll post it on this. And it's called Mise en Plazen. It's like mise en place, but like with a German accent. It's pretty good.
So good.
And basically this is a playlist based on. So my kitchen right now is very international. There's me, who like I'm American, Mexican American. I have a cook from Mexico City. My sous chef is from Australia, and then I had a stagiaire from Korea and another stagiaire from Germany. So it's very like a very, very international.
Is there anybody from France in your kitchen, in your restaurant?
No way. Never. But so the music is very it changes. It goes from like punk rock, Dead Kennedys, to Madonna, like Britney Spears, Taylor Swift. We love Taylor Swift. We love Taylor Swift in the kitchen.
Right.
1992, I think that's the album. Super good. And then also to something that I've been really into recently is world funk. Is like African funk music.
Ooh.
It's next level. It's so good. Yeah, I'll send you some stuff. But
that's great. Yeah, throw the link to the playlist for sure in the comments of this. I'd love for people to be able to listen to that, especially in the kitchen. I think that's amazing. I think when we started out, we had mixtapes still in the kitchen.
Yeah,
I got a fucking Spotify playlist, man. I love it.
We had a boombox, and like you just put your CD, and like people would come in with their CDs to put music in.
Dude, it's so great. Robert, I appreciate it. I appreciate that you're getting out there, lending your voice. I think the thoughtfulness that you put into everything that you do and how you cultivate your community is important, man. So I am absolutely a fan of that side, let alone the cooking that you're doing, for sure. So appreciate you, man. All right. I'll check in with you later. Take care.
All right. Ciao.
So good. Such a good conversation. You know, I love being able to speak to somebody like Robert, who's across the world in a completely different country, that's positioned completely different. The industry is different. A lot of the points that he made, very important, the way that there is a different type of view and investment in the hospitality industry in France. So many things are different, yet the same. It's the same. The interaction between humans within and without the restaurant is the same. And I love that about it, that he's got this international kitchen in Paris, France, and his experience is lending itself to that international experience being the same no matter where you are. And I love that about it, that there's these nuance and differences, and especially in the way that the business is positioned, yet the way that we interact, the way that they're listening to Britney Spears in their kitchen. And I'm sure people are laughing, joking, listening to Britney Spears in kitchens all across this country is amazing as well. So thank you to Robert for lending his voice, because like he said, this is, not his wheelhouse. It's not his comfort zone, but he thinks it's important for him to be able to share and use his voice. And I think he does it really, really well. All right. Tomorrow's episodes, 2 episodes. Adam Harding, who is with Roth Shepherd Architects. We're going to talk about design. I'm very fascinated in design in this very particular moment where there's going to be a lot of redesign of restaurants, the expectation of how the spaces are managed, as well as just the future when it comes to the way that we are positioning our businesses and the way that design and architecture plays into that. So that is noon Mountain Time tomorrow, Thursday. And then legend, so excited, at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, Farmer Lee Jones. You know him, even if you can't place the name. It's the white shirt, the red bow tie, the mustache, and the blue hat. He is absolutely a legend. The Chef's Garden. He's been bringing thoughtful, well-curated products and vegetables and microgreens to our kitchens for a lot of years, to our homes now. I opened up the box that they sent me this morning, and it was amazing. It was like Christmas morning for me opening up that box. So I'm excited to share some of what he's done, is doing, and sees for the opportunity in the future. A lot of what we talked about with Robert and continues to be a storyline here is how we connect with the land, the produce, the people behind the products, and the people in the trenches, and the people that we serve. It's the people. All right. I'll check in with you guys tomorrow. Appreciate you. Cheers.